What's up and welcome to the episode of Gizmos of Tech. Today we're going to be comparing the top 10 ultra high level performance gaming laptops. These start at $3,500. So yeah, you got to have a deep wallet and you got to desire the maximum possible frame rates. And most of these laptops should perform within about 10% of each other, given silicon lottery and different cooling potentials, as well as CPU performance levels can also impact gaming performance. So we're going to talk about a lot today. We've got 10 different machines we're going to compare, and that includes some of the 16-inch models. Notice that like the Scar 16 and Scar 18 are here. And we've got a few double models like the Raider A18 and Raider 18. The A18, of course, being the Ryzen version that has the new 9955HX3D in it. And that, I think, is a very important thing to consider, given the fact that, as far as I can tell, there's only 2 laptops that you can currently order or buy or try to buy. They're sold out as far as I know. The 9955HX3D, which is the 3D cache version of the Ryzen chip that should, in theory, provide a bit more gaming performance in CPU-bound games. Now, it's not going to help very much in GPU-bound games like at QHD or 4K, and in single-player titles, it won't matter as much. I think the 9955HX3D is primarily for esports players, especially that want to maximize possible frame rates in CPU-bound games like Counter-Strike, Valorant, Warzone, those types of games, right? So what's up and welcome to this detailed live stream. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, there will be timestamps later after the fact, but during, of course, during the live, we can't do that. We're just creating this literally live. And so who should consider buying one of these machines? Well, if you're the kind of person that buys one laptop maybe every 5 to 7 years, and you just want to get the best of the best, and then you don't have to worry about buying a new laptop for a while, then yeah, this is the kind of machine that you buy and keep for a long time. And number 2 is this kind of person that just has a lot of money to burn and they just want to buy the best. They want to pick the best laptop they can possibly spend their money on, and they've got $5,000 to do it, or $6,000 or $7,000 to do it. Maybe even more if you're going to configure it with bigger SSDs, because you can get up to, $8,000 pretty easily if you slap in some 8 terabyte SSDs in here with 64 gigs of high-speed memory. So yeah, there's a lot to consider here. So this is not a what laptop is the best bang for the buck. This is not a the best premiumness. Like, it's not for thin and light and performance. Like, this is just like maximum performance, maximum cost, and which ones should you consider? Now, the key thing here to consider as well is right now we still don't have detailed reviews and benchmarks for almost all of these, because, I mean, I'm a reviewer and I've been trying to get my hands on these for the last month and a half. But the simple fact is there are not very many review units going around. As far as I know, Jared's Tech is one of the only reviewers that have actually been able to get their hands on a 5090 laptop. There's been a handful of other ones, but there's very few of them, okay? So I personally have a XMG Neo 16 with a 5090 on the way right now, and I should be getting it next week, so I'll be able to do my first 5090 benchmarking hopefully next week or maybe the week after, depending on if there's delays and I have to set it up and all of that, right? So, okay, so what things should you consider going into this purchase? Certainly price, weight, display quality, as well as resolution, brightness, and its gamut. The price, the big thing here with the price is, of course, this ranges from about $3,500 to get a 5090 at the cheapest, with the lowest end specs configured, put together, with, that means usually either 16 or 32 gigs of RAM, with the Max, HP Omen MAX 16 is the cheapest one. And then the most expensive one is the MSI Titan Dragon Edition, which costs, I think, $6,300 currently. So there's quite a price range here, but they typically are going to be going for a little bit over $4,000, all the way up to almost $5,000. So the most of these laptops on the right here are going to cost $4,300 to about $4,700, depending on how you configure it and what it comes with. So the Alien Area 51 is also one of the laptops that can be configured for under 4K. the 16-inch version. The 18-inch is just a little bit over 4K. So those, the Alienware and the Omen 16 are the two cheapest ones to consider if you're looking to get the most performance, while at the same time paying the least amount of money. The Legion Pro 7i, I think, was $4,700, but I think you might be able to configure it a little cheaper, especially if you have coupons. And this is not factoring in tax. So if you're in a state that has sales tax, or you have to pay additional tariffs or import duties if you're international, you're going to need to tack on maybe another 7, 8, all the way up to maybe 20% if your country charges additional tariffs onto these prices. All right, so we're going to be going through a lot of stuff today. The Alienware Area 51M I have not made a video on, or the HP Omen MAX 16, so this will be the first time I'll be talking about them publicly. And they both seem like very promising, capable laptops, at least on the surface. All right. So, other things to consider. CPU, right now, there are primarily two CPUs that will be in most of these laptops. The Intel Core Ultra 275HX, or maybe the 285HX, but almost always the 275HX is in almost all these machines, except for I think the Titan 18HX has the 285, which is just slightly faster, but really it's not going to make much of a difference. It's like a higher silicon bend, but and can run at a slightly higher clock speed. And then, of course, the other CPU to consider is the Ryzen 9955HX or HX3D, which is the 3D cache version. So those are the two primary CPUs. Really, it's the 275HX from Intel and the 9955HX or HX3D, depending on if you want the 3D. For GPU, of course, there's only one high-performance GPU. It's from NVIDIA. It's the RTX 5090. Now, do you really need an RTX 5090 to play games really well? No. You could go with the RTX 5080 or the 5070 Ti, and both of those GPUs are going to be able to play QHD games quite well. Now, they should be very comparable. The 5070 Ti and the 5080 should be very comparable to an RTX 4080, maybe slightly faster. The 5070 Ti is very similar to the 4080. The 5080 should be just a little faster than the 4080 previously. But if you want to save some money and you still have good performance, my recommendation is to try to find an RTX 4080 gaming laptop right now, or one of the 5070 Ti gaming laptops. That should be able to be found for anywhere from, I think the 5070 Ti laptops start at $1,700 for the MSI Vector, and they go all the way up to $2,500, depending on, or maybe even more if you're getting something like the Blade 18 with the 5070 Ti. You're still gonna be able to play games because you got 12 gigs VRAM and plenty enough performance to handle ultra settings in the vast majority of games. So that's my current recommendation if you're trying to get value, but that's not what this laptop live stream is about. We're gonna talk about ultra levels of performance and max configuring these laptops. So I'm really excited to get into this, and I have had almost all of these hands-on in terms of experience. When I was at CES, the only ones I didn't get hands-on with was the Omen MAX 16 and the Alienware Area 51 because I could not find them when I was at CES. But I've got hands-on with all of the other ones on this list, and I'm currently live streaming from the Razer Blade 18. Okay, let me check chat. Enil says, we need to consider how to maintain my GE67HX needs to have the whole heatsink out to clean dust in the heat sinks. Ooh, that kind of sucks. That's an interesting, I mean, usually you'd be able to at least do most of the dust cleaning with a vacuum and like dust off being gently pushed in there, get most of the dust out of there. But if you really want to do a proper job, yeah, taking the laptop apart sometimes is necessary. But you shouldn't have to do that but once every couple of years. I don't know. Akash says the 5070 Ti is giving a little more than a 4080 performance, I heard. Yeah, it's very similar levels of performance. RTX 4080 and a 5070 Ti seem to have within a 5% variance range. So very promising in terms of budget GPU. I think that's kind of be the sweet spot for most people getting into a gaming laptop this year. But like I said, that's not what this video is about. This video is about the ultimate level of performance. Now, me and my team have created this list of top 2025 gaming laptops, and this has every laptop that you can currently buy in almost all the different configurations on here. And there are links to the tech spec pages as well as some key benchmarks or key benchmark estimates as well. So please do consider checking out the laptop list in the link in the description down below. I have also linked down below all of these laptops and where you can buy them. And if you do use those links, it does help support me as a content creator. My goal as a content creator, though, is to be as helpful as possible to you, not to sell you a laptop you don't need or oversell you. I'm going to try to sell you just the right laptop for what you're looking for. And I'm just trying to provide the best information in an easily understandable format for you. So let's dive into it. Okay, so this laptop list can be filtered and sorted in so many different ways. There's a top 10 deals on gaming laptops where you can still buy RTX 4060, 4070, and potentially, look at this, the RTX 5080 is actually on sale now. Interesting. So one of the cheaper RTX 5080s is on here. But a lot of, if you're just after 1080p gaming, then I think an RTX 4070 and below is excellent. If you're after QHD gaming or higher resolution even, then going for an RTX 4080 and higher, I think is the better choice. Because the RTX 4060, 4070, while it can do QHD gaming, it does struggle and will require a lot of settings adjustments, even right now with current games. And future games, obviously, it's going to get worse and worse as games get more demanding. So my recommendation currently is to get an RTX 4080 or higher, or RTX 5070 Ti or higher if you want to play games on ultra settings for the next few years. Of course, that's with some upscaling, DLSS on quality, or maybe balance depending on which resolution you're using. And of course, if you want to go 4K, then getting the best of the best that you can possibly get, an RTX 4090 at a minimum, or maybe 5090 would be recommended if you're going to go after 4K gaming. An RTX 5080 would probably also do quite well at 4K gaming, but will require, a bit more settings tweaking than the 4090 or 5090. So, okay. So here's the laptop list. I have selected the key units off this list to represent what I view as the top 10 high-performance laptop options. So option number 1, we have the Alienware 16 Area 51, okay? So let's take a look at the config page and take a look at some photos. We have a light-up trackpad, which is a very premium feature. We also have a RGB light bar on the rear of the device, but it's kind of this more subdued light bar. It doesn't really play out as strong, and at least in the videos that I saw from Alienware, it doesn't seem like a super bright, vibrant light bar, but more of a subtle light bar. In addition, we also have some round speaker RGB lighting, and of course a per key RGB lighting on the keyboard. The 16-inch does not have a number pad. There are upward firing speakers, and it's supposed to have a really high quality webcam on here as well. So when we go into configuring the Alienware 16 Area 51M, we're going to go into the config page or the buy page for each of these laptops and check out what options they are and price them out in addition during this video. So if you get the RTX 5090, you have to get 64 gigs of RAM. Thankfully, it does come with 6400 mega transfer memory if you do go with that. So that's faster than average memory. The default memory this year is 5600, but you can get it up to 6400 configured out of the box. You can also slap in 3 M.2s. I think you can go double-sided in here. So theoretically, if you put in 8 terabyte SSDs, you go up to 24 total terabytes of space in this machine. Now, by default, it comes with 2 terabytes with 1 SSD for $38.49, which is a pretty dang nice value. Now, in addition, a big upgrade from Alienware this year, something that Alienware has really struggled with in the last several years, is low nits brightness displays, only being like 270 nits or around 300 nits in almost all their gaming laptops, even their most expensive ones. So right here is great to see. We have a QHD plus 240 hertz, 3 millisecond response time, 100% DCI-P3, 500 nits brightness with NVIDIA G-Sync, Advanced Optimus, and a full HD web camera. So the web camera on the 16-inch is not as good as the 18-inch because the 18-inch has an 8 megapixel web camera. So that's a key difference to consider when looking at these, besides, of course, having the trackpad option, or sorry, the number pad option being available on the 18-inch. So this is the Alienware 18. And the other thing to consider that I'm going to go over with each of these laptops is the ports. Now, the Alienware 16 and 18 have the same ports, and that includes a full-size SD card reader. Let's go ahead and just kind of blow this up. Can I make it full screen? Get a closer look here. So we have a full-size SD card reader as well as a headphone port on one side. So here's the SD card reader and headphone port, and then on the rear is where all the other ports are. We have a LAN port, 3 USB-As, 2 Thunderbolt 4s, an HDMI, and our power plug. Of course, you can see the RGB light bar. That's the same, very similar on the 16 and 18-inch. The keyboard layout does look quite nice with full-size arrow keys, full-size looking number pad, and I believe you can get this with Cherry MX key switches as well. Yes, Cherry MX ultra low profile mechanical keyboard with per key RGB lighting. Now, the other thing about the 18, you get an upgraded display with 300 hertz refresh rate instead of 240, so that's nice. 500 nits, 100% DCI P3 color gamut, G-Sync Advanced Optimus, and a 4K 8 megapixel webcam with HDR. So between the two, the Alienware 18 certainly seems like the slightly better system because of the better display and better webcam. In addition, the Alienware 18 has a 280 watt claimed total TDP. And the 16, so here's the 280 watt claim by Alienware, and the 16-inch only has, I believe, a 240 watt. Yeah, 240 watts. So the 18-inch is supposed to give the CPU 40 watts of additional cooling, which doesn't seem like it would be that much of a difference, but I don't know. Because honestly, the 240 watts seems low to me because in my testing, I oftentimes see laptops pull 270 watts or 275 watts in games like Dead Space because the CPU pulls over 100 and then the GPU pulls 150, 155 or something. And so combined together, they're doing 270, occasionally maybe peaking up to 280. Even in the SCAR 16, and Asus only claims 240 watts. So it just really depends on the game, but most games, you should see the GPU hitting up to 175 with a base of 150, and then you've got an additional 65 watts of power to the CPU, according to Alienware, and up to 280 watts in the Alienware 18. So you're talking about 105 watts potentially for the CPU in the Alienware 18, which is really, really good. That's a really good claim. Both of these are going to be using heat pipes with cryo chamber. So they're cryotech technology, whatever, cryo chamber. Is this? Yeah, so they have a chamber with heat pipes coming off with a quad fan design, at least in the 18-inch. So it's a pretty interesting looking laptop. You've got Element 31, which is their branded gallium silicon for the CPU, which is very similar to what a lot of other laptop manufacturers are using, like on the SCAR 16 with liquid metal. So I do think this Alienware 16 and 18 both carry lots of potential. We can see the slightly stripped down version of the thermals on the Alienware 16. Looks like the fans and the heat pipes are slightly different, slightly smaller with slightly less coverage. These two lower fans are definitely smaller on the 16, right here and right here. So overall, I think they both have lots of potential, and I do think they're priced the most competitively, aside from the HP Omen 16. So, I'm a fan of Alienware products. I've been hesitant to recommend them primarily because of the lower nits brightness on the display of past generations, but this one should have better nits brightness. And I also think that this design is, I think, a little bit cooler than the past gen Alienware 18. Like the new 16 and 18, I think they look better, especially since you get the color trackpad on the big beefy machine. Now, these are heavy. These are not light. Let's check out the pounds on these. I gotta scroll up to get to the tech specs here. The 18, where is it? weighs 9.56 pounds. Okay, very heavy laptop. The 16 weighs 7.49 pounds. Also very heavy, especially for a 16-inch laptop, right? Most 16-inch performance laptops are going to weigh closer to 6.5 pounds. So this is about a pound heavier than a lot of them out there. Okay, so I think that's a pretty good overview of the Alienware 16 and 18. I think they're promising laptops, and they could be really, really good for 2025, especially considering the value that they provide compared to the competition that currently is priced around $300 to $700 more per laptop. Let me check chat again real quick. Yeah, should I wait for the 5060 laptops or go for a 4060? So I think the 5060 will have a nice upgrade, but the 5060 when it comes out is going to be priced pretty high, probably $200 to $300 higher for sure relative to its value. And a 4060 right now is, I think, a great buy until they sell out here and they're not available. If you're looking for a great deal on a RTX 4060, check out the laptop list because there's a lot of good deals here at the very top on RTX 4060s. If you're just trying to get like 1080p gaming or lower FPS, like 60 FPS QHD gaming, it can be still very, very good. Okay, so hope that answers your question. Pack says, hey Gizmo, ordered the XMG Neo 16 last week with the 275HX and the 5080. Pretty excited for it to arrive. Also excited for your testings. Congrats. That sounds like an amazing laptop. We're going to talk about the XMG Neo 16 here very soon. It's at the end, actually, of today's video. So, yeah. Okay, the Acer Predator Helios 18 AI. This guy is a very impressive machine in specs, and I think the design is really, really cool as well. So let me see if I can blow up some of these pictures. I did a hands-on with this guy at CES. The front light bar that wraps around the front left side, it looks really, really good. This right here, these little light strips on top of the keyboard deck, they don't look as good, in my opinion. They should be brighter. And hopefully they fix that. The keyboard actually itself was very bright though, and I liked it a lot. The design, I do think, is a nice refresh, and it looks a lot better than the previous gen. Acer Predator Helios 18, and the 16 also looks good. I am not talking about the 16 because it's currently not for sale, as far as I can tell, with the 5090. And the 5090 currently can only be found in Canada in terms of for sale. If you're actually to buy it right now, but it is technically for sale, so I'm talking about it. I do think the Acer Predator Helios 18 is the kind of laptop that some people will buy and really, really, really love. Now, I think the main downsides to the Predator Helios 18 is that the design, when you compare it to something like the Scar 18, it's just not as good. I think that probably the closest comparison is probably the Scar 18 because they have a very similar build quality and ethos around the product. And the Scar 18's design upgrades with the toolless bottom is just better. So for me, I would want to pay less for the Helios 18 if I was going to be buying it compared to the Scar 18. So if it goes on sale and the Scar 18 is on sale and it's a couple $100 less, then maybe it would be worth consider picking up. But the nice thing about the Helios 18, we have a high TDP. It doesn't have 175 watts of power throughput to it, but we do have a mini LED 1000 nits brightness display with 100% DCI P3, and it's a UHD. So we're talking 4K 120 hertz here. And in some senses, 120 hertz UHD is really not that good when you consider the other ultra high resolution options out there like the Razer Blade 18, which I think has a 240 hertz 4K display. So, higher resolution, while at the same time being higher refresh rate, which is better, and it's dual native display as well. So I feel like the display technology on the Acer Predator is kind of like the best of last gen for the UHD. I believe they did mention when I was at CES that they will have a QHD option, and maybe that one is going to have you should have at least 240 hertz on the refresh rate. So I think a lot of gamers would rather go for that. So I think that in some ways this display is a weakness and a strength depending on what you're looking for. if you're a single player gamer who doesn't really need to have more than 120 hertz refresh rate, then the Predator Helios could still be a viable option, especially if you're a video editor or whatever, Photoshop designer, and you want to see those really detailed, high resolution photos, just really, really crisp with the 4K display. I get it. You know, that there's a draw there. And yeah, so I think the Acer Predator Helios 18 is going to be a good laptop. I think almost all the laptops on this list are going to be good laptops. But when you're comparing them and actually dropping $4,000 to $5,000 on the laptop, you're like, I kind of want to buy the best if I'm going to get the best. So right now, I don't think the Predator Helios 18 is the best, but I do think it's a good one. And if it happens to be cheaper in your region or your market, or you find it on sale, it could be worthy of picking up if you're looking for a 4K 120 hertz display and you're happy with that. Okay. Ergonomically, this is a very sharp, like a lot of sharp edges on here, like compared to like the Alienware, for example, a lot of rounded edges on the Alienware, which makes, I think, a lot more comfortable if you're going to be putting your hands on the wrist rests and actually using the keyboard and mouse all day. So that's one thing to keep in mind. I think it's a downside ergonomically that this is probably going to hurt your wrists a little bit over time, but maybe not too bad. A little bit rounded on the edges. I don't know. That's just one downside. And it's also a stylistic thing. Like, does the style of the Predator Helios 18 speak to you or not? I think that if you're dropping this much money on a laptop, the style of the laptop should also speak to you. But I'm anticipating great performance on the Helios 18. And I'm anticipating that it's going to be a good laptop, worthy of consideration if it's available and priced well in your market. Gigabyte Aorus Master 16. This is the 16-inch version of Aorus's highest end laptop. It does have a 175 watt RTX 5090 in it, and it's got a QHD 240 hertz OLED display, which those two things put together makes this thing a very attractive option for someone who looks for an OLED display instead of mini LED, because OLED has a little bit less bloom. There still is some bloom typically. And OLED also tends to have a little thinner display edge, so a little more portable than a mini LED, which has to be a thicker display. And OLED also has a very, very fast response rate. And depending on the OLED, it could also be very, very bright, up to maybe 500 nits, and maybe locally peaking ultra, ultra bright, you know, very, very high brightness when it's very small. But the overall panel's brightness is not as bright as mini LED. So when you're talking about display technology, mini gamers who want to game on it all the time, I think are going to want mini LED. But, you know, if you're a graphics designer or video editor or someone who's very picky about having bloom on their display in particular, OLEDs are just going to provide a more uniform, less bloomy display. Now, the main downside to OLED, in my opinion, is that you're going to have screen burn-in over a long, long period of time. So if you're going to be buying a laptop and you want to keep it for 5 to 7 years, the chance of screen burn-in by the time you reach the 5-year mark is going to be fairly high. So I would definitely be cautious if you're going to buy OLED. Just make sure that you're not leaving the start bar in the same spot all the time, have it disappear, or you know, don't keep the same things on your screen 24/7, and you probably won't have a big problem with the burn-in, but we'll have to see. Like all these OLED gaming laptops, you know, we'll have to see what like. A lot of the OLED companies are claiming that burn-in issue is fixed, but I don't think it really is fixed. We need to see and judge it. We won't really know though until probably 3-4 years from now what the status of laptops like this is, if burn-in becomes an issue for them over the long haul. So that's my main caveat with OLED. For me, I would definitely consider buying an OLED display because I usually don't keep a laptop for longer than 2 to 3 years. And the other thing, if you're going to go OLED, make sure you have the display auto turn off after 5 minutes of inactivity. Like I keep my IPS displays on like a 5-hour timer before it turns off. You wouldn't want to do that with an OLED display. So that's another downside. OLED displays can also be very power efficient, so maybe good for battery life. Okay, done talking about the OLED display. Let's take a look here at the tech specs for the Aorus. All right, so the Aorus 16 You can get it with a 5070 Ti, 5090, or a 5080. QHD 240 hertz display, 500 nits, and like I said, it's an OLED, and so that's really great. G-Sync Advanced Optimus, HDR True Black 500, VESO 10,000, Clear MR, I don't know, Pantone certified, so good for video editing, Photoshop. You have a Gen 5 SSD in here and one Gen 4 M.2, 3-zone RGB backlit. So there's not per key, which is interesting. 1.7 millimeter key travel is nice. With N key rollover support, so you can touch a lot of keys at once. You got, for ports, an HDMI 2.1, one Type A, one Type C Thunderbolt 5, which is great to see on the left side. And I wonder, is the Alienware Thunderbolt 5? Okay, so 2 Thunderbolt 5 ports for the 5070 Ti and above. Interesting. So if you get a 5070 Ti and above, you have 2 Thunderbolt 5s on the back with the Alienware series. I believe we get Thunderbolt 5 on the Predator, though I'm not sure. Most of these laptops will support Thunderbolt 5, but some will not. Yeah, 2 Thunderbolt 5 ports on the Predator. So we should be seeing Thunderbolt 5 support on a lot of these laptops. But this one has one Thunderbolt 5 and one Thunderbolt 4, but at least you have the one Thunderbolt 5. I would not expect much speakers from the Aorus. They're not going to be very high quality. You have an IR webcam for Windows Hello, but it's only 1080p. And a 99 watt-hour battery is nice to see. 330 watt power adapter, and only 2.5 kilograms, which is, like I said, on the certainly a more lighter weight option for a high performance 175 watt RTX 5090 configuration. So right now you can get this for $42.99 from Newegg. There's a light bar in the front. I do like the keyboard and the trackpad. They work well just fine, but there is no number pad on here. Another downside to consider for the Aorus 16. Overall, I feel like I would wait to buy this one. I probably wouldn't pay full price, but if it ever gets down to like $3,800, that would put it at a very competitive price versus the competition. So it would probably be worth picking up at that point. Let me go back and check chat and make sure that we're good. Beta says the lack of AMD CPU laptops this year has been rough. We've got 2 AMD CPU laptops with the Ryzen 9955HX or HX3D coming up here. So Akash says, if I buy the 5070 Ti, can I be comfortable to use for at least 5 years? College, editing, and content? Most likely, Akash, I think you'll be all right. It's only 12 gigs of VRAM, and so you might run into VRAM limitations eventually, but it's still pretty good. Had an OLED on the Blade 16, and it was more like a mirror. Interesting. Yeah, a lot of OLED displays are glossy, very reflective, and mini LED displays oftentimes, I think, are often more matte, or at least bright enough because they can get up to 1,000 nits to where you don't notice the reflections as much. So some other trade-offs there. Okay, the Master 18. When I was at CES, they said that the display was 18.3 inches, which I don't think it actually is. Now, this has a reverse light bar with an Aorus logo thing that shoots down, which is pretty cool. We also have a front light bar going across the front. Per key RGB lighting. We have a number pad, a nice size trackpad, and this should be an ultra high level of performance. We've got a QHD 240 hertz mini LED 100% DCI-P3. I believe we have, let's check out all this, everything in here. So 270 watt thermal power combined according to Aorus, which is very good. Power delivery 3.0, Thunderbolt 5, 99 watt hour battery, Wi-Fi 7. So, I mean, we are talking about obviously a very high level of performance machine, and I think a very nice design overall. But I don't think it's the best out there. right? So I think this falls into the same camp as the Acer, the Acer Predator Helios 18 and the Aorus 16 and 18. Both of them fall in the same camp that if they're cheaper in your market, due to tariffs, due to availability, due to local market concerns, I think they're going to be fine laptops, great laptops to buy, and I can probably recommend them based on the specs and everything that we're getting here. But they, in terms of competitiveness versus all the other laptops in the market, it's not going to be in my top recommended laptops. $43.99 for your top kitted out 64 gig, 2 terabyte, 5090 with a Core Ultra 9 275HX. All right. So yeah, it's good, but I just don't think it's worth the premium cost, say, over the Alienware. The Alienware 18 coming in at a nice value with all the premium specs and features that it's got. The Alienware 18, currently out of the ones we've talked about, would be my number one pick out of those 4 so far. I think it's just a better bang for the buck given the price point being several $100s less, while providing some nice extra features like the 8 megapixel 4K webcam, the light up trackpad, perky RGB, supposedly really good speakers, have not tested them. All right, it's time to move on to the HP Omen MAX 16. This is the Intel Core Ultra 9 275HX with the RTX 5090, 32 gigs DDR5, 5600, a 1 terabyte SSD, and we get a nice upgrade to the display, a QHD Plus 240 Hz OLED 500 nits display. And this is going to run you, if you get the top config with 16 gigs of RAM, you're looking at $3439, which is the cheapest RTX 5090 money can buy. It's going to be how much cheaper? It's about $300 cheaper than the Alienware 16. As far as I know, this is the cheapest one that I have seen. HP oftentimes gets the lowest prices out there because they are, as far as I know, I think the number one, either HP or Dell are the top 2 highest volume resellers in America. So they just get the best prices on their machines because of the high volume, and they consistently sell really, really well. So that's the main reason why it's a little bit cheaper. The big thing here for me is I have not reviewed it. I've seen some positive reviews, heard some positive reviews. I know Just Josh did a review on this that was positive, but you got to keep in mind whoa, interesting. So this is only a 1920 by 1200 display for this price point. If we upgrade to the OLED one, now that's going to run you $3629. Okay. So those are very important to keep in mind. You've also got a non-OLED IPS 500 nits display. A lot of people will probably go for that instead, and that puts it at $34.99 just for future proofing. That way you don't have to worry about the OLED burn-in potentially being an issue down the road. I do think OLED displays are beautiful, and I will definitely buy a laptop with an OLED display, but it's just my caveat when I recommend it. It's just to be aware of it, that you're going to need to handle the laptop a little bit differently and do your own OLED burn-in prep work on the laptop's settings. Okay, $34.99. I feel like the Omen is one of the best values. I don't know. I can't necessarily say for sure that it's going to be the very best value out here, but the specs versus value versus the claims, it's impressive. Let's take a look at the feature page if we can, so we can see what HP is claiming about this. Where is the feature page? Interesting. Taking a look at the ports, we got, just gotta go to specs to actually check it. For ports, we have only an 83 watt hour battery, pretty important, keep that in mind. A 280 watt power adapter. That, I think, could be an issue, but maybe it'll go up to a bigger one if you get the higher end. I don't know. That seems like a low power watt level. The nice thing about the Omen, for sure, 5.92 pounds, which is the lightest one we've seen so far. 1080p IR camera for Windows Hello. I do like that. 88% screen to body ratio, or 89 if you round up. Okay, so here's some specs. It says per key RGB with a light bar in the front, up to 64 gigs of memory. It says up to 250 watts total TDP, but how can that be possible with only a 280 watt power brick? That does not. That seems either like a misprint or they're going to send a more powerful power brick. I have to do more investigation into that because you need more than 30 watts to run the display, the camera, the speakers, the fans, all of that. Also is going to take some juice. Yeah, I mean, this is, if you're talking ultra high levels of performance, while at the same time getting the top end specs, while same time not breaking the bank, being the most reasonably priced, the HP Omen, I think it's got something going for it, and I think there's lots of potential there. All right, time to move on to the MSI Titan 18HX, but let me check chat next. Check chat again. When it comes to raw performance, I heard Lenovo takes it this year. I don't think so. Beta says my HP Omen MAX 16 came with a 330 watt power brick. Okay, that's a lot better because you need extra watts if you're going to go, the 250 watt combined. Ethan says, is there a reason why the 5070 Ti laptops have the same price as the 4080 laptops? The main reason is because they have parity probably right now in terms of like, you buy a 4080 laptop and a 5070 Ti laptop, they're going to be very similar in terms of performance. John says, it's 6 a.m. Hey, it's only 5 p.m. my time, so sorry. Over here in Thailand, it's a little different time schedule. But yeah, you can come back and check it tomorrow when you wake up, and you can get the timestamps and jump around as you need if you come back. Okay, so moving on. MSI Titan 18HX AI. Now, we're talking about the highest end Intel Core Ultra 9 285HX and the RTX 5090. Let's take a look at the spec page here. Okay, that's not it. Gotta go here. Let's go to the specs. There we go. So in terms of actual pricing, not the Dragon Edition. If you go to the Dragon Edition, it's more expensive. $57.99 for the non-Dragon Edition Titan 18. You get a haptic trackpad on here that's RGB and lights up. You have a deep mechanical travel keyboard that feels really good to type on if you like a nice clicky deep travel keyboard. 120 hertz 4K display, which I think some people are going to kind of wish that it was, 240 hertz 4K, to be more competitive with something like the Blade 18. Give you more esports advantage. The other thing about the Titan is that it's big. It's a big machine. I still don't love the rear lights, like the lack of rear RGB, I guess you could say, with just this colored plastic. I think they should probably not put color in there. I think it's the blue maybe is a little better than the red lines of last year, but yeah, in terms of RGB-ness, I feel like they could upgrade this a little better, especially for the price, make it look a little snazzier. All right, so according to their tech page, they're offering a 120 hertz mini LED 4K, or a 240 hertz QHD plus, or, and this is new, I have not seen this before, a UHD 220 hertz IPS display. Well, if you can get the 220 hertz, that sounds a lot better, a lot more competitive with the Blade 18, and it would push this machine's display to be more competitively, but I've not seen that for sale yet. So I actually got to see that. And 220 hertz, I've never heard of a monitor doing 220 hertz refresh rate. That's definitely different. So they're claiming 270 watts GPU, CPU combined. So that'd be 95 watts to the CPU. Says up to 96 gigs. We only have I think we only have 2 memory slots. Yeah, 2 slots of memory this year. We got 3 M.2s with Gen 4 and 1 with Gen 5. So you get 4 storage slots, which is really nice. You get a 1080p IR Full HD webcam. The speakers on this were pretty good. Cherry MX per key RGB keyboard. A 4 times 2 watt speakers with 2 watt subwoofers. So you get a 6 speaker system that, like I said, they do sound pretty good. 2 Thunderbolt 5s, 3 USB-A 3.2s, an SD card reader, full size, HDMI 2.1, an Ethernet port, 99 watt hour battery, and a 400 watt power adapter, 3.6 kilograms. So like I said, this is a monster. It's very heavy. It's definitely a full desktop replacement style machine. And if you plan on mainly keeping it on your desk, I could see people really enjoying this laptop. And if you want to spend a lot of money, and money's no object, you can get the Dragon Edition version, which is has this really cool Dragon Eye version design on it that's kind of like painted on there. I think it's probably this. I think they say that each emblem is hand done by an artist, but I don't know to the extent of the hand doneness, because I don't know how you exactly replicated it if it was artistically done every single time. At least elements of it are done by hand. And so that's why the Dragon Edition is over 6,000. I think it's like 6,300. And there are probably limited numbers of those for sale. So I think the Titan, I don't think it's the best laptop on the market, given the display limitations, and you can't actually buy it with the higher refresh rate displays. But in terms of performance, usability from a desktop replacement perspective, I think a lot of people would really like this. The lack of a high-end webcam is a little disappointing when you see, the higher-end webcams on the Blade 18, the Alienware 18. I feel like they really need to step that up, especially given the price point. And I feel like the speakers could also get better. Though I haven't heard the 2025 versions, but I'm assuming it's similar to the 2024 version, which had good speakers, but not amazing. So there's a few areas where I think are some low-hanging fruit that MSI could still improve this. The other thing is you don't have G-Sync or Advanced Optimus. And this is the only laptop on the list, I think, that doesn't have G-Sync or Advanced Optimus, which just seems really ridiculous to me. You're going to spend the most money on the Titan and it missing 2 key basic features to help prevent screen tearing and to make your battery life longevity work a little better. Now, one really nice thing about the Titan series is there is an iGPU only mode in the MSI Center. So this lets you switch into long battery mode where you can know for sure the NVIDIA GPU is not going to turn on. There's a few other laptops that have this feature, the Scar 18, the Legion Pro 7i, and the XMG and the Eluktronics laptops. Those laptops also have a integrated GPU only mode so that you can game on the integrated GPU or just use it in a way to know for sure that the NVIDIA GPU is not going to be woken up, because Advanced Optimus or just regular Optimus, either one of those, there's lots of applications in Windows that secretly wake it up and it can be really annoying. So I like that there's an iGPU only mode. The downside is all of the current iGPU only modes require a reboot to get to that point. And I wish you didn't have to go to the reboot to be able to do that. So overall, I think the Titan 18X is a fine laptop. It's just really, really high price for all of the specs you're getting. You can spend $1,800 or $1,700 less on the Alienware 18 and get the same specs with a pretty similar level of feature set with the RGB light up touchpad and maybe better lighting, slightly better ergonomics and looks, and a better webcam. Of course, we don't know about the speakers and some other things, but everything else is pretty comparable. So to me, the Alienware would be the better way to go than the Titan this year, given the specs and the feature set. MSI Raider 18HX. This is going to be the more competitively priced 18-inch version of MSI. MSI, of course, almost always prices their laptops extra expensive at launch, and then after 3 to 6 months, significantly put them on sale or just pretty much sell them often and a lot for $500 or $1,000 discount or whatever. So I would expect that the Raider and the Titan pricing will come down within the next 6 months to be more competitive with other laptops out there. But just know the launch pricing can be pretty crazy, all right? MSI Raider 18HX, it's almost identical to the Titan 18HX. No RGB on the touchpad. You do have a front RGB light bar going across the front. I think the ports and the internals are almost exactly the same. The other thing about the Raider is there's no MX mechanical keyboard. So that's another key difference. We can go ahead and take a dive into the specs of the Raider. They're offering a lot of different display options on here, but if you were to actually go to buy it, you're getting the 120 hertz mini LED as the display option. So you do have a QHD 240 hertz, you have a full HD, you have a UHD 220 hertz, just like the Titan. There's also a full HD 144 hertz. I can't imagine spending this much money on a 144 hertz full HD display on an 18-inch laptop, but apparently maybe in some markets they're going to offer that. I don't think that's offered in America though. 260 watts according to MSI, so you're talking 10 watts reduction in total cooling. I believe the Titan, does the Titan use a vapor chamber and the Raider uses heat pipes, I think? Let me just go through the Titan real quick. So they claim the 285HX can go up to 220 watts of power. I would not, in my testing, we did not see that be sustained at all. And so I wouldn't expect that. Now, but maybe, because we have a new vapor chamber cooler here on the Titan. So this new vapor chamber with 2 large fans with a dedicated heat loop for the Gen 5 SSD, that's nice. In terms of, you're getting some premium features with the Titans at least, that maybe you don't get with the Alienware. I don't know. But actually, what really matters to me is what's the actual cooling performance like under real workloads. And I'm sure it'd be very competitive on here, but I don't know why that says 4 slots here for the, for SSDs, not for RAM. Okay. I know, the Titan was offering 4, but I think the new version in 2024 only has 2 slots. But for SSD, you get 4 slots. So depending on if you need 4 slots for your SSD support, you can get it, and you get that Gen 5 with a cooler. So if you're after Gen 5 SSD performance with a cooler, so that you don't run into overheating on your Gen 5 SSD, which are prone to overheat, the Titan 18HX has got you covered. And it's one of the only laptops that has a dedicated cooling loop for the Gen 5 SSD. And I believe let me check, but I think the Raider may have a cooling loop for the Gen 5 SSD as well. Let's go through here. Yeah, it's got its own little cooling loop that goes over the Gen 5 SSD to help cool it down as well. So you can see though that the Raider has heat pipes rather than the giant vapor chamber. So that's probably the biggest difference between the two in terms of performance spec. But in terms of real world gaming, they're probably going to pull a lot of similar wattage between the two. Let's talk about the Raider A18HX, but let me check chat real quick first. Titan has vapor, the Raider has pipes. Yeah. Legacy says Lenovo cooling pad with the 5070 Ti. Titan would be a good combo. Would be extremely good. I mean, yeah. Any of the internals with the Titan, it's going to be good cooling. When will the HX3D models with 5090 come out? So super googly, it's already been out. As far as I know, like for example, I've talked to XMG. They want to send me a 9955 HX3D so I can do a side-by-side comparison with the Intel Core 275HX. But the problem is that they're running into is that they can easily source me a sample for the Intel version, but the Ryzen version is sold out hard with weeks and weeks of wait. And so they're struggling to send me a review sample with the 99HX3D version. So it may be a while before I can make that comparison video. But they were already sold and they're shipping this month already, as far as I know. If not this month, soon, in the next few weeks, they're getting them in and starting to send them to customers, but they were ordered, I think, last month. So the 99HX3D has already been for sale for certain laptops. And so the MSI Raider A18, I messaged MSI again today asking them about potentially sending me one. I don't know if they will, but I'm requesting that they send me the A18 as the highest priority because I really want to benchmark the 9955HX3D for everyone to see its performance, and then we can compare it with the Intel Core 275 and 285. So HX. Okay, so the Raider A18, you're looking at, I think, a really great machine. And the Ryzen 9955HX3D, it doesn't need as much wattage, I don't think, as Intel. Like, I think the 9955HX, based on what I've read, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I'm pretty sure it's going to cap its wattage a lot like the 7945HX up to a certain point. It's not like Intel is going to keep scaling the higher the wattage you put in, but it's going to get diminishing and more diminishing returns with the Intel chip. But with the 9955HX, they basically just cap the wattage at a lower amount, probably either 100 or 120 watts. So that's in CPU-only workloads. And then in the combined workload, CPU, GPU, it just doesn't probably need to pull quite as many watts to be at full performance. So it should theoretically not need quite as extreme of cooling to get the peak performance still, in theory. The new Intel 275HX, though, should also be more power efficient than the previous generation, but we'll have to see. See if it's actually fully competitive with the new Ryzen chips. I think the new Intel Core Ultra 275HX and the 9955HX3D should be very competitive, except maybe under extreme CPU bounding games. That's the only situation where you're going to see an advantage for the 9955HX3D. Otherwise, the Intel versus Ryzen debate, if you're playing 4K games or QHD games, the chances of you being CPU bound are much more minimal, at least in modern titles. The only exception being some esport titles. That's where you might still see some performance differences between the two. So majority of people, I think when you compare the Intel versus Ryzen debate, it's going to come down to what other things does the CPU do well for you? Is one of them faster in video editing, web browsing? Does one give you better battery life than the other? And the new CPU architecture with the new Intel 275HX, where there's no hyper-threading, it changes the game a lot. The architecture has changed, and we're talking, you can't really expect the same one-to-one performance ratio because it's such a different architecture compared to the previous gen. So that's the main thing I'm going to say about the Intel versus Ryzen debate right now, is that if you're talking 4K or QHD gaming, the chance of it making a difference in your games is pretty minimal because both CPUs are plenty fast enough for the vast majority of games, to where you're not CPU bound, you're GPU bound, especially if you're playing on ultra settings. If you're playing low settings to maximize FPS, then you might run into CPU bounding like in an esports title. Okay. All right. Okay, so in terms of laptops that I'm really, really excited about reviewing and testing, the MSI Raider A18 is in my top 3 this year, just because of the Ryzen 9 9955HX3D. And as far as I can tell, this one's back ordered and sold out just like the XMG Neo 16 with the 9955HX3D that they have. So I think it was, like I said, a pretty big mistake from other brands not to try to offer the 9955HX3D on their laptops. Now, that said, we're talking about a supply crunch here. There's not enough chips to go around, so maybe it wouldn't have even helped really if other manufacturers offered it, because they would also be sold out because there's only so many CPUs to go around anyway. So maybe it's a moot point. Maybe the point would be that we need more of these chips from AMD. That would really help, so that way people could buy what they're wanting to get. Because that's really I think the biggest supply limiter right? I mean, even if Asus offered a SCAR 18 with the 9955HX 3D, it would still be sold out, just like the Raider A18 and the XMG Neo 16 with the 9955HX 3D. So it's sold out not because manufacturers can't make them fast enough. It's because AMD can't make these chips fast enough for everyone to put them in their laptops. So, yeah, that's the supply and demand and the supply chain, and just the priority of who's getting the chips right now is still kind of big problem area for at least the 9955HX 3D version of the machines. All right, it's time to move on. We're going to talk SCAR 16 and SCAR 18. This is definitely one of my top recommendations this year for a handful of reasons, but probably the number one reason is the toolless bottom of the chassis. All right, it's really, really cool that you can take the bottom on and off without needing any tools here at all. And on top of that, they managed to make the laptop have a 360-degree light bar all the way around the machine, which is just such a cool design choice. You know, when you pull this thing out at a cafe, it's going to be the coolest looking laptop in my opinion. All right, maybe I'm just a young gun and loves RGB too much, but like the fact that you can easily pop off the bottom and put it back on in just a second or two to clean your fans or to swap out an SSD, you know, or upgrade your RAM, it's just so much more convenient, and I love that. So SCAR 16, SCAR 18, super innovative this year, and for that reason alone, I really, really like it. Let's talk through the specs on the SCAR 16. Core Ultra 9 with a 275HX. Like I said, almost all these are going to get the 275HX. Got the RTX 5090, 175 watts. Asus claims similar levels of performance on the SCAR 16 and 18. 32 gigs of DDR5 5600 with a 2 terabyte SSD, QHD 240Hz mini LED, 1100 nits peak brightness. I think sustained last year was around 500 or 600 nits. Very, very bright, vibrant display. There's going to be bloom on this display. You also have a number pad built into the trackpad on at least the higher end versions of this machine. Let's get into some more tech specs, go through what they've got in here. We've got liquid metal. You got, I think, does this have, are we dealing with vapor chamber or heat pipes this year? 255 watts according to manual mode. In turbo mode, 230 watts. So in manual mode, you're able to crank it a little bit higher. You got the 5090 and the Intel 275HX. This is the toolless bottom example to access your SSDs and your memory, which is really, really cool. For ports, you got Thunderbolt 5. You got a tri-fan design. So if you look at the bottom toolless as we zoom out again here, you get to have a little fan here that helps cool the center of the machine down, which, you know, reading a lot of these new Razer Blade 16 reviews, you know, it's thinner. It also suffers from the lack of heat dissipation. You know, like the wrist rest gets really, really warm on some machines, and having that third extra fan in the machine, you know, kind of halfway up, it just helps move the heat out the back, which it helps dissipate that heat better. So I really like having that third fan in my Blade 18, and in the laptops I've tested, I've enjoyed having it. Now, of course, one of the big issues for the SCAR series the last couple of years has been the, what's it called? I'm brain farting right now, but it's a little noise that, gosh, what's it called when it goes through the VRMs and it wobbles a little bit and you get a little like noise. I'm sure chat is going to talk about it. My gosh, I can't believe I can't remember this right now. Oh, coil whine. That's what it is. Okay, so the coil whine is when electricity goes through the VRMs or coils in the machine and causes little vibrations. And some people have really complained a lot about that. And I did own a SCAR 16 that had some coil whine in it. And I think it hurt the resale value a little bit on that 2023 version of the SCAR 16. So that's an example, right? Like if your laptop ends up having coil whine, it can be a little harder to resell it used, or it could annoy you if you like to have, the main times you hear coil whine, not saying you're gonna get coil whine in the 2025 versions, but the main issue with the 2023 version was if you were running the fans on silent or quiet mode, maybe performance mode, and then you're trying to push as much wattage through the machine as possible. Normally when you're in turbo mode or manual mode, the fan noise drowns out the coil whine and you don't hear it pretty much at all. But when you're running quiet fans, the coil whine can sometimes be audible. And so like in a library, you're trying to render a video in a library or something like that, maybe you hear the coil whine going, you know, going a bit more than you would on any other laptop. So Asus, you know, talking to Sasha at Asus, they've added a new quality checking station to their factories to where they have like a zero noise room where they listen to the machines and listen for coil whine before they certify the laptop as being ready to go. Not all of the laptops suffered from coil whine the last couple of years, but some of them did. And so in 2024, it was supposed to get a lot better. And I didn't think the 2024 version of the SCAR had that. And I don't think the 2025 version will have it. But I just want to talk about that because it was such a big issue for the SCAR series, you know, recently. So when it comes to display quality, you know, they're talking, well, on here they're talking 1200 nits with 2000 dimming zones on the 16, because that was on the 18, but I guess they upgraded that now on the 16 as well. You got HDR, 100% DCI-P3, G-Sync, Advanced Optimus. The display on here is also, the speakers on here are also really good. You also have this new rear, like anime matrix style animated display on the back of the lid. So, and I think this makes a lot of sense putting it on the SCAR series. They're not showing it here, but basically you can put in whatever. You can put your name there, or you can put, you know, your brand or whatever on the back here. You can customize the rear animation logos, Animavision, to be whatever you want it to be, which is cool. Like, that's a really cool thing. Plus the 360-degree RGB light bar. To me, the SCAR 16 and the SCAR 18 are the peak gamery design of the year. Like, it's got the coolest design with the toolless bottom and the 360-degree. With the main, I think, downside to the design is that the actual keyboard itself, the RGB lights on the keyboard, are still not super bright, which is sad for me because I love a super bright backlight on my Blade 18. Like, I love having that. I love having that option to be able to see it in broad daylight. I can still see it easily. And if you have a SCAR series laptop, you're not going to really see that RGB coming through in bright environments like you would on the Blade. So that's still an area where I think they could still improve it. Like I said, the audio on here is good. It's supposed to be, I think, even better, but last year's SCAR was still quite good. It wasn't amazing, but it was good. 90 watt-hour battery with Type-C charging of up to 100 watts. And some good ports on here, but not great. I think the primary ports that are lacking on the SCAR 16 is going to be a full-size SD card reader. That's probably the number one, but you got 5 total USBs with 2 Thunderbolt 5s, a Wi-Fi 7, and Windows Hello with IR camera this year, which is a giant thumbs up because last year there was still just I think a 1080p webcam with no IR. So you get Windows Hello. That's a nice step up. And then, of course, Armory Crate. I also like the Armory Crate application for controlling the software or controlling the laptop, the fan modes, doing the custom mode. You know, being able to do dedicated GPU only mode or integrated only mode for better battery life. The SCAR series it gives you a lot, and they have a lot of premium features on here. There's just a couple of them, like the lack of a full-size SD card reader, or I don't know if the total performance, like, like there's certain things that make this have slightly lower performance, like the out of the box RAM speed, the lack of XMP profile support. Like if you want 6400 mega transfer memory, you're not going to be able to get that on here. If you want a 4K display, you're not going to be able to get that on here. There's just a few things on here that are just not maybe optimal for certain people. The other thing, of course, is it's a super gamery design. So if you're not into gamery laptops, you're not going to like the Scar 16. So the Scar 16, fully kitted out, nice, with max specs, is $42.99. I think the price is reasonable, especially given the new 20% tariffs on the machines. And the improvements that the Scar 16 had as well, I feel like it's worth the price relative to the other laptops on the market, say like the Master 16, the Acer Predator Helios 16, the Alienware 16. The HP Omen MAX maybe would be worth saving some money, especially if you wanted an OLED display instead of mini LED. The Scar 16 and Scar 18 being very, very similar. Jumping over to the Scar 18 costs $200 more if you go with the Scar 18, so $44.99. But you get all the same design improvements, with the main difference being the Scar 18 has a full trackpad, right? So the Scar 18 with that trackpad being, full number pad, not trackpad, full number pad, so that way you don't have to have the number pad be on the trackpad. But similar performance, Asus, I think, claims a few more watts per combined wattage. I think it's like 10 more watts. Let's check what they're claiming. But in terms of real world usage, when I was doing my tests, I saw similar wattage on the Scar 16 and 18, but maybe slightly higher temperatures on the Scar 16 than the Scar 18. Okay, so they're claiming 255 for manual in here. So it's the same on here for the Scar 16 and 18 according to what they claim. Of course, these claims are lower than the Alienware 18 and the Titan 18, but in terms of actual gameplay, I didn't notice lower levels of wattage on the Scar series compared to those other laptops. So it's kind of a weird catch-22. And that's talking from my personal experience in the 2023 and 2024 Scar series and Titan series and Raider series, and all those tests that I've done on all of these laptops. All right, so we're going to talk about the Legion next, but just to sum up, I think the Scar 16 and 18 are the peak gamery design laptops of the year so far. Going to have great performance, great displays, great chassis, with only a handful of drawbacks this year, with some nice upgrades to the design and feature set. Legion Pro 7i. Let's talk Legion Pro 7i. Lenovo contacted me recently, and they're going to send me the Legion Pro 7i soon here with a 5080, not a 5090, but we'll be able to test that out hopefully sometime soon. We've got the new light bar on the back. Some people hate this design. I think it looks classy and nice. I don't know. I did enjoy all the ports being on the back, the way the Pro 7i used to be. And I used to also love all of the RGB coming out of the vents of the 2021, 2022 Pro 7i. That looks so good. I got hands-on with this at CES. I like the chassis. I love the keyboard. It's my favorite keyboard on a gaming laptop, just because of the feel, the layout with the arrow keys lowered down a little bit, makes it easier to feel. The keyboard backlight also looks really good, very bright, just like the Razer. And the machine, it functions really, really well with the Lenovo Vantage software, giving you lots of customization with really, really great cooling on the Pro 7i. So in terms of maximum possible performance machine, the Lenovo Legion Pro 7i is up there just because of how much customization the Lenovo Vantage software gives you, giving you an advantage over the Scar 16, for example, or the Acer or the Aorus. I don't know how the Alienware is going to do this year with the Command Center. The Command Center was updated and improved on the Alienware last year. It was more simplified, but it still wasn't as good as something like the Lenovo Vantage software. So I think in terms of software, for controlling your laptop, the Lenovo Vantage is the number 1 or 2, with XMG Neo 16 with their control software and their BIOS the option probably being number 1. And then you've got the probably Armory Crate being number 3 in terms of laptop software for controlling and manipulating your laptop to get it to do what you want. So that's a huge advantage, being the number 2 best software for controlling your laptop. This year, we also have a QHD 240Hz OLED with 500 nits brightness and 100% DCI-P3 color gamut, which is great. That's just insanely good. So let's get in here and configure one of these Legion Pro 7i's. Windows 11 Home with 32 gigs of 6400 megahertz transfer memory. You can upgrade that to 64 gig if you want. 1 terabyte is included. The 5090 being selected costs us $42.89. So basically the same price, or $10 cheaper than the Scar 16. Puts this machine right up there with if I had to choose between this one and the Aorus 16, the Acer Predator, the Omen, okay, so I would pick this one over the Acer or the Aorus. Probably I would pick this one over the Scar 16 due to the slightly better software. But I think the Scar 16 and Legion Pro 7i are just really, really, really close. The features they both offer and the quality of the machines. I think the Scar 16 looks cooler. I think the Legion Pro 7i is probably built a little bit better because of the more all metal design versus being the more plasticky design, and the more gamery aesthetic versus the slightly more professional aesthetic of the Legion Pro 7i. So trade-offs, but overall, I think the Pro 7i Gen 10 is up there in the top 3 probably. The Scar 16, the Legion Pro 7i are probably my top 2 in terms of, like, if you don't care about price and you want to buy the top performance 16-inch laptop, Scar 16, Legion Pro 7i, and XMG Neo 16 are your top 3, is what I would say. We're about to talk about the Neo 16 here in a moment. But let's see here. Does this have Windows Hello on it? Let's see if we can go back. Going back. Let's go to the tech specs. Do they have... integrated webcam, 5 megapixel webcam on here? That's a nice upgrade compared to last gen. But they don't say that it's infrared, which makes me think it may not be Windows Hello compatible, which would be, I think, the only laptop on this list that doesn't have Windows Hello. But let's see here. Does it? Yeah, 5 megapixel with eShutter. Do not mention that it has IR support. So almost for sure it does not. Also, the speaker system, I don't know if it's going to be better. Speaker system was good, but not great last year. I would say it was good, but not great. Also, look at this. We only have Thunderbolt 4 support instead of Thunderbolt 5, so that's another downside to the Pro 7i. The ports now also being on the left and right side is going to be, you know, a pro and a con for a lot of people. Only 6 pounds here of weight. And I mean, I think the Legion Pro 7i is going to be a great laptop. The other thing that I really like about the Legion is their extended warranties that they offer, I think, are setting the industry standard in terms of price for your value. Let's see here. Do they have the warranty? Let's just see if I can slap the 5090 on here. And then we go to add to cart. Usually they have the warranty option after you add it to cart. Let's see. Add services. Yeah, Legion Ultimate support. To add 1 year Ultimate support is $179. To add 3 years is $195. So Depot support is kind of like your normal more budget support. If the CPU or GPU or motherboard goes bad, display starts malfunctioning, whatever, you're going to be able to get it repaired, but it doesn't cover accidental support. I doesn't look like ultimate support covers accidental anymore either, but you get higher quality technicians if you get ultimate with less wait time, that kind of thing. So I would say that the ultimate support is probably worth it to get like maybe the 3 or 4 year. If you're going to want to keep this laptop for a long time, then going for a 3 or 4 year warranty could be really, really smart. And you could add accidental warranty for a year. Interesting, you can't add it for multiple options, like for multiple years. Interesting. So that's kind of the warranty support. A lot of warranties cost a lot more than this. To get a 4-year warranty at many companies can cost up to $500, $600 or something like that for a really expensive laptop like this. All right. So the Legion Pro 7i is definitely one I can recommend. Let's talk about another one that I can definitely recommend, the XMG Neo 16. The port selection, the build quality, the redesign that they've done this year, it feels so good. It's one of the only laptops I would say that feels as good or better than the Pro 7i in your hand. And since it's an all metal unibody chassis, it's just really, really rigid as well. Like the Blade series, I got hands-on with this at CES. And the good thing about the 2025 version of the Neo and the Eluktronics, I want to mention Eluktronics as well. They're going to be sending me some stuff this year, hopefully as well. They're making the same hardware here between XMG and Eluktronics. It's just that XMG caters to Europe, specializing out of Germany, and the Eluktronics focuses on the American US market. And there's even more resellers of these laptops with different brand names, but they are from Tongfang, which is like a Chinese and Taiwanese company that works to create these designs with companies like XMG and Eluktronics to tweak and make the laptop as good as possible. And so if you get an Eluktronics or an XMG, you'll get support on your laptop from your specific reseller, right? So if you have to deal with warranty, you'll have to send it back to Eluktronics or you have to send it back to XMG. You don't send it back to Tongfang for repairs. So that's the key thing to keep in mind. And you can get an extra warranty on here. To get a 3-year, which extends your warranty by 1 year, it's $249 for 1 extra year. For example, that's a lot more expensive than the Lenovo. But at least with Eluktronics, you get a 2-year warranty for free with the laptop, which is certainly above average. The other advantage of going with Eluktronics is that you get the Prima Mod Pro BIOS. So Prima's like this guy that makes BIOSes, custom BIOSes. He made them for free for a while for the laptop community, and I even used one like over 10 years ago on my old Sager Clevo chassis that had a desktop CPU, so I could tweak and overclock it. And this, it's basically kind of the ultimate in terms of customizable BIOSes. And XMG also has a similar BIOS, custom BIOS. That they set up, but it's just not done by Prima. Prima's just a different, kind of his own brand, basically. But it has a similar level of customization. So between XMG and Eluktronics' custom BIOSes that they offer, you can do XMP memory profiles, you can undervolt your CPU from the BIOS, you can do other things from the BIOS, like do your GPU switching settings and a lot of different things that you can't. Like, for example, load line calibration undervolting is possible with the XMG. I'm not sure if it's possible with the Prima BIOS, but you're not able to do that on any other laptop out of this whole list, as far as I know. Load line calibration means that you're inputting slightly less wattage into the CPU, but it's still trying to run at the same clock speed. Therefore, it's undervolting your CPU out of the box. So you don't. Once you set that up, you don't even have to do anything for undervolting anymore. It's just going to be undervolted for you in everything that you do. Assuming you don't crash. If you start crashing with it, then you probably want to reset your load line calibration to be a little less aggressive or to turn it off entirely if you're not stable. But The XMG Neo 16 is not cheap. The other big thing about the Neo 16 is that it does feature a water cooler. And so the Eluktronics Hydroc 16 also has the same water cooler option. It hooks up to the back of the machine, has a water cooling loop that goes over the CPU and the GPU, providing additional cooling potential for the laptop itself. And, you know, especially if you're looking for maximizing your CPU performance, this is going to provide more CPU performance than even something like the Titan 18HX's vapor chamber, because you get this whole extra giant, you know, full-size radiator out here with a water pump to cool your machine. So if you're looking for the highest possible performance, plugging in a water cooler, you don't mind plugging in a water cooler, then you're probably going to get the very best performance out of the XMG Neo 16 and the Eluktronics Hydroc 16 in terms of just overall performance, but at the expense of having to deal with the hassle of a water cooler and plugging that in and unplugging it. Now, big upgrades this year on this laptop. You've got this, the new chassis is slightly refined. They've taken in the chassis a little bit, made it a little bit thinner, where they were able to, like, tapering these edges in compared to last gen, making the overall footprint a little bit smaller, while at the same time maintaining the TDP and the cooling potential and the performance. Now, the other big upgrade is the QHD 300 Hertz 500 nits display. I think we're only looking at, let's see. Yeah, so the main downside here is that by default, you only have 100% sRGB, which is, this is one of the only laptops in this whole list where you're not getting 100% P3 color gamut out of the box. I think the Omen also had that. Now you can upgrade this to a mini LED that gets up to 1,000 nits and has 100% P3 color gamut. So it makes it now finally actually competitive with the very, very best displays on the market. So the XMG laptop, if you have fully kitted out and you're buying it in euros, you're looking at 4324, or approximately. You're probably gonna want more memory. Well, that's 32 gigs, that's fine. But if you want to upgrade it to the faster memory, then it's another 50 euros. And then you want to upgrade the Wi-Fi or other things. You get a 24-month standard warranty on here as well, so that's really nice. And just like the Eluktronics, you get that extra warranty. All right, so we're looking at 43.75. Let's see if we go to the Hydroc 16 and we configure this. Keep in mind that the default price on the Hydroc 16 does not include an SSD or Windows 11 and RAM, I think. Yeah, so the default price here, $29.99. You upgrade that to the 5090 for $600 more, so now you're looking at $3,600. And then you can bring your own SSD if you want, but let's just assume you need to put in a 1 terabyte in, and you need to upgrade to 32 gigs of RAM, and you want Windows 11, you're looking at $39.45. Nice. So another laptop that costs less than $4,000. So the Hydroc 16 undercutting the Scar 16, undercutting the Legion Pro 7i by about $300, undercutting the Aorus and the Acer. The only laptops that are cheaper than the Hydroc is going to be the Alienware 16 Area 51M and the HP Omen 16, which is going to be $34.99 with the OLED display and everything else at the base for a 5090. So you go to the OLED display. Oh, you go to OLED display, it's actually $36.29 for the Omen 16. So the Omen is the cheapest fully kitted out 5090 with the Alienware 16 and the Hydroc 16 coming in second. So if you're looking for the cheapest 5090 that's fully kitted out, the Omen 16 is where it's at, but the Hydroc's not too far behind. Let's talk about our last ultra performance machine, the Razer Blade 18. We've got the Intel Ultra 9 275HX RTX 5090, 32 or 64 gig of DDR5, 5600 RAM. The big thing about the Blade 18 is the total footprint size for an 18-inch laptop is more like the size of a 16-inch, and this 18-inch also can weigh less than some 16-inch laptops out there. So if you're talking about you want the most performance in a 18-inch chassis, this isn't it. All right. But if you want the 175 watt GPU with a good enough performance on the Core Ultra 9 275HX, and you want it to be more portable, and you want an 18-inch display, the Blade 18 is it. It's going to be the most portable while still having the full level of performance. Now, it's not going to quite match something like the Titan in terms of CPU-only power draw. And I haven't reviewed the 2025 version. Maybe it's a little bit better, because if you do look at the Blade 18's page, you're looking at a dual mode display. This is the standout feature, besides the aluminum unibody chassis that's incredibly rigid and the amazing speakers and the better quality webcam. The other big thing is the dual native display, which provides 240 hertz UHD plus, so 16 by 10, which means we're talking about a taller display than normal 16 by 9, which almost all these displays are 16 by 10, I believe, on every laptop we talked about today. But it's dual mode, so you can go to full HD plus 440 hertz. So if you're playing Warzone and you want to hit the maximum frame rate, you could, in theory, switch to full HD plus. The problem is Warzone's still not going to go probably over 240 hertz refresh rate, so there's probably not any point because it's a CPU-bound game. But maybe a better example would be Valorant or League of Legends or maybe Dota 2 or other older esports titles. Counter-Strike 2, that also might hit it all the way up to 440, probably would. So there are games that will do it all the way to 440 hertz refresh rate. So if you're an esports gamer and a content creator, you can alternate between going to the 240 hertz or jumping down to the 440 hertz response rate. Now, me personally, as a person who's played competitive games for 20 plus years using high-end hardware and up to 480 hertz refresh rate displays, I do think going above 240 hertz does give you a slight advantage, but I think 240 hertz is really the sweet spot in terms of response rate and feeling really, really good. So for me, if I could do UHD 240 hertz, I would probably just keep it at 240 hertz UHD all the time. That's good enough for me. I'm probably never going to be switching it to the 440 hertz mode unless I know I'm going to be like, okay, I'm about to get really competitive in Valorant. I'm playing ranked or I'm doing a tournament or something. Now, yeah, I switch to the 440 hertz mode to have the slight advantage. But realistically, I think a QHD 360 hertz, if they could have done that, or a QHD 400 hertz, I would still rather have that display than the UHD 240 hertz, simply because UHD is kind of excessive, even on an 18-inch display. I still think QHD is the sweet spot for value, detail, and being able to see everything, right? If I play games with UHD on any of these laptops, I'm gonna need upscaling. So, if I'm doing UHD, I'm probably gonna be having to put upscaling on at least quality, maybe even down to balanced, to be able to get over 100 FPS in the latest, hardest to run titles. Unless I'm doing DLSS 4 with multi-frame gen, maybe then you wouldn't have to, but it really depends. But if you're trying to get the smoothest gameplay in the most number of games, a QHD plus display is still a better sweet spot in terms of detail, resolution, and all of that. Because if you go to UHD, you're going to basically be running the same settings visually because you're going to have to use more upscaling. That's basically what I'm saying. So if you go to UHD, the main advantage, in my opinion, is not in the games. It's in the productivity apps. You want sharper images in Photoshop. You want sharper images in video editing, for web browsing, for looking at those tiny little details, that's where the UHD advantage is. It's not in the gaming, because the gaming, you just have to use more upscaling to get the same frame rate. So functionally, it's not that big of a deal. The main thing here, though, is that it's at least 240 hertz refresh rate, so you don't feel like, oh, it's only 120 hertz. I'm at a disadvantage now in esports games, because it is. It's a disadvantage in esports games going down to 120 hertz versus 240. So going to the 240 refresh rate at UHD, I think that's the sweet spot in terms of, in all content, you're getting the best experience. That said, if it was me for gaming, the ultimate is still probably something more like 300 hertz QHD or 360 hertz QHD. I would still rather have that than this UHD 240 hertz. But I'm just trying to say that there are some people who would rather have the 4K display, like professionals that do graphics and whatnot, you know. So interestingly enough, Razer is claiming 280 watts of total power, which is more than the 2023 Blade 18 that I'm still using as my personal laptop. So it's very interesting to me that they were able to increase the total power. Well, as far as I know, the total footprint is still the same. Now, we only have a 5 megapixel webcam on here. As far as I know, it's still the same. This 18-inch QHD 300 hertz mini LED, that's the version of the display that I would order if I get the option to, okay? But the 18-inch 240 hertz UHD, that's also really great. It's just slight trade-offs there. As far as I know, the QHD 300 hertz option is the 2024 version of the display, not the 2025 version. I think the 2025 version has to come with this dual native, as far as I know, but I could be wrong. But the 280 watt total throughput is pretty insane. We've got a Thunderbolt 5 port with power delivery on each side. So you have two Thunderbolt 5s, and this says Thunderbolt 4 as well. Did they change the ports a little bit? Let me see. Let me take a look at the picture, because that is different than mine. The bottom here also has a slightly different design. That looks really cool if that's RGB right there. But notice that the Blade 18 has that tri-fan design, which moves air away from the wrist rest. Like, I can game on my Blade 18 all day and my wrist rest barely gets warm because of this third fan. Another thing to point out is that this third fan will help keep the battery, which is located right here, cooler. So it'll help make the battery, the lithium ion battery, last longer, because you don't want to store the battery under hot temps all the time. So I think that's one of the reasons why the Blade 16 will tend to suffer from battery bloat more often than the Blade 18 that has the tri-fan design. Battery bloat meaning that lithium-ion batteries over a long period of time, especially kept at 100% capacity all the time, are going to expand. Now, my battery, as far as I know, has not done that. My chassis looks good. I haven't opened it up recently to check it out, but I've had my Blade 18 for over 2 years now with no battery bloat issues, no major crashing issues. The only problems I've really had with it are related to Windows 10 and the Advanced Optimus fuzzy switching. So sometimes there's like a flashing to the backlight of the panel to where the light on the panel is lighting up and down if I am in Optimus mode. So that means that I can switch between the integrated GPU and the dedicated GPU. If I have that mode enabled, then I get the flashing. And so I can't use that to get better battery life. I can only use the dedicated GPU mode on my laptop, which has been fine for me. I only get about an hour, maybe an hour and a half battery if I'm trying to use battery. That's the number one downside right now to my Blade 18 in terms of the longevity. And this was an early issue with the Blade 18. The newer Blade 18s, I don't think have that issue. So it should be better on the new ones. And I did work with Razer developers to try to get the issue fixed, and they weren't able to figure it out because it was hard to replicate because it was only happening occasionally. But the last time I switched into Optimus mode, it did happen again. So sadly, it's still an issue for me. But my Blade 18 has been amazing in the sense that like I consume media on it, I can watch movies on it, I can listen to music from the great speakers. The display still looks great. I've got a QHD 240 hertz on my Blade 18, and the performance, I have not done detailed benchmarks to make sure the performance hasn't fallen off, but the performance has been good. The fans have been working. The trackpad and the keyboard have still been good. The main issue with the keyboard is the small up and down arrow keys right here and fat left and right arrow keys makes it really awkward to type using the arrow keys. Now, ooh, interesting. Oh, I'm looking closer at the keyboard here. We have a number. Why is it showing a number pad? Why does this show a number pad? And this one does not show a number pad. No number pad. Is there a number pad on this thing now? Am I just discovering this number pad? What? Dedicated 10 key. Programmable macro keys. What? I didn't even realize there's a 10 key on here now. That is amazing. So that's another nice upgrade for the new one. There's also a Razer cooling pad that you can get to pair with your Blade 18 or any laptop that should work quite well. There is a Thunderbolt 4 dock that I'm actually currently using on my Blade 18 that Razer sent over. And it works really well. I've had no issues using it. And I use it to instantly plug in my 3 cameras with my HDMI inputs and my, I don't use it for my mouse, but that's the main thing. It makes it easy to plug in all of my live streaming setup on the go using that Thunderbolt dock. And you can use this with any laptop. You don't have to use it with a Blade, but it's a nice that it's, you know, matches and it's, you know, Razer enabled and all that. But yeah, so my Blade 18, can I recommend it? Yes. I want to make a dedicated video just on my Blade 18 2 years later review. Like I said, I just had a few issues with it, but overall, I've really, really enjoyed the laptop. The main downside being that I have to plug it in often because I can only go for about an hour away from the wall before it dies on me. But performance, as far as I know, has been really great. Gaming, I can play literally any game on ultra settings the whole time I've had it, and it's been a great gaming experience with almost no crashes. And the processor in it has been great as well. Great laptop, not too loud of fan noise, great speakers, great display. I've enjoyed it. So the Blade 18 is another one I can recommend, but I don't think the Blade 18's performance is going to match the XMG Neil or the Hydroc. But at the same time, these have water coolers. You know, the Legion Pro 7i also I think is going to perform a little better than the Blade 18 in terms of CPU only, but maybe the new one is better. Need to actually test it because they are claiming more juice going through this system, you know. And then the new 10 key keyboard, that's a nice improvement. And the display going up to UHD 240 hertz, I would say that is an upgrade over the display that I have. But I would say maybe in my perspective it'd be a downgrade compared to the 300 hertz QHD one they offered last year. Let's talk pricing. If you go to the new one, all right, new one, 5090. The 5090's base price is $48.99. So we're looking at a really expensive laptop here, all right? And you can use double-sided SSDs here on this machine because I got my 16 terabytes of space in my Blade 18 with my 2 8-terabyte SSDs as well. So, okay. All right, so that is my total list. Let's talk top 3. If I have to narrow down after talking through all of these different laptops, for value, you just want to get a 5090 at the lowest possible price. I feel like the Omen 16 is probably the most attractive. 3500, 500 nits display with the full CPU, GPU combo. You're saving money. You're trying to get the most performance while at the same time not spending $5,000. You know, I get that. I feel like the Omen's the sweet spot in terms of value for your money. Jumping back over here, you know, I don't think it's going to be as premium of a laptop. I don't think the speakers are going to be as good. I don't think you're going to get as good a performance on this thing as the Legion Pro 7i and some of the other high-end ones, but I haven't done detailed benchmarking on this. I'm just not anticipating that, right? And plus the software on this is not going to be as good as the Lenovo Vantage or the Eluktronics or XMG's control center or Armory Crate, but it'll work, it'll play games, and it'll cost you less money. So I think many people that are trying to save money are going to go for the Omen. If you're after the most premium experience, I still think the Blade 18 is probably the most premium because it gives you a little more portability while supposedly giving you extremely high levels of performance with the best speakers. As far as I know, these are still probably the best speakers in a gaming laptop. And a very comfortable overall ergonomic experience now, especially with the 10 key. That's probably a better, I don't know, I have to actually try out the 10 key on the Blade 18 before I really give my true opinion on it, but it certainly seems quite nice. And the build quality on the Blade 18 is just more premium. I don't know. It still is more premium than almost any other machine. I don't know. The XMG Neo 16 is probably the next closest in terms of most rock solid feeling in your hands. But the Legion also extremely good build quality. So trade-offs between all of them. As I narrow it down to the last recommendation, it's probably between the Scar 16 and the Legion Pro 7i as another top 3 contender. I would say that the design on the Scar 16 and 18 is superior. It looks cooler. It has more bells and whistles. It has the toolless bottom. I probably would go for the Scar 16 over the Legion. That said, if you're going to do a lot of typing, the Legion, it's got the better keyboard. And I really love the keyboard and the performance. So it's really a toss-up between the Legion Pro 7i and the Scar 16. Both are highly recommended. Which one would I get if I actually had to spend the money on the Pro 7i or the Scar 16? I'd probably go for the Pro 7i because of the extended warranty options. Better pricing on the extended warranty options and a little bit more solid feeling build with the metal versus the more plasticky Scar 16. But I don't think you're going to go wrong necessarily buying any of these. The Alienware 16 provides better value than the Legion Pro 7i and the Scar. It costs $500 less, and it has some extra premium features on here too that those don't even have, like the RGB light up touchpad, but that may not matter to very many people. The Acer Predator series and the Aorus Master series, they're not bad. I just feel like they should be priced less than the Scar 16 and the Legion Pro 7i, just because I don't think their designs are quite as premium. And if I were to have someone ask me, would you get the Aorus Master 18 or the Scar 18, for example, I'd be like, the Scar 18 has the toolless bottom, better RGB, and just those two factors alone, if it's the same price, I would go Scar 18. So the only reason I would recommend the Acer or the Aorus laptops is because they would be priced better. If they're on sale, then maybe it's worth it to save $500 compared to the Scar or the Legion laptops. But if you're trying to save money, then why not go for something like the Omen? Because then you're saving even more money. You're talking about saving, what is it, $700 cheaper than the Scar? Oh, $670 cheaper than the Scar. So you're saving a ton more money if you go for the Omen. So if you're after saving money, then you're really talking about like the Aorus and the Acer needs to be priced to match the Omen to make it really, really competitive versus the Omen. Same for the Alienware 16. If the Alienware 16 was priced the same as the Omen, I would pick the Alienware 16 over the Omen too, but the Omen's just cheaper. So it's at the current prices, I think the Omen 16, the Blade 18, and the Scar 16 / Legion Pro 7i are my top 4. I can't decide on the third one. I guess the Legion Pro 7i, I don't know. I would put, if money is no object, Blade 18, then Legion Pro 7i, and then Scar 16. That's Scar 16 or Scar 18, either one of those. I would probably go in that order. And if you're trying to save money, then go with the Omen 16 or the Alienware 16 if you're trying to get more value for your money. Unless, of course, you can get the other laptops on sale. Like if the Scar 16 goes on sale and it's actually more competitively priced, then it may become the #1 recommended option. So to me, when you're looking at all of these, and if you value money, then you really got to look at the sale prices and what's actually available for order. You can actually buy the Alienware, but you can't even order the Scar 16 right now because it's so back ordered. So that's another example. Like, do you want to wait 2 to 3 months potentially to get the one you really, really want? Or do you just want to buy the one that's actually in stock? And so there's a lot of things to consider. Let me go ahead and hop into chat. I see a lot of people chatting. So what's up, everybody? Welcome. I would invite you to check out the full live stream if you haven't checked it out. I would invite you to ask some questions right now. I'll try to answer questions for a few minutes. Yeah. Okay. Gizmo, please do Razer Blade 16 and 18. So the reason why I didn't feature the Razer Blade 16 in this is because it is not a full power RTX 5090. So you're giving up a pretty significant chunk of performance if you go with the Blade 16. Let's go ahead and go check out the Blade 16. Oh, there it was, new Blade 16. All right, so let's say you get a 5090 Blade 16. The nice thing about the Blade 16, the biggest upgrade for the Blade 16 versus the Blade 18 is this Ryzen AI 9 HX370 is going to take a lot less power. It'll be much more power efficient and give you a lot better battery life versus the competition. All right. So when you're talking about, do you want to have a 8-hour plus all day battery life on the go when you're web browsing and doing office tasks? Like the Blade 16 will definitely be able to do that. The Blade 18, if you optimize it really, really well and make sure the NVIDIA GPU never activates, which is a big problem right now with NVIDIA GPUs and Advanced Optimus, then you might be able to get 6 to 8 hours of web browsing on the Blade 18. But if you fail to optimize it well, like my Blade 18, for example, only gets like an hour if you're in dedicated GPU mode. But for example, the biggest thing here in terms of battery life on these laptops is, can you consistently keep the NVIDIA GPU from activating? Advanced Optimus is really, really bad at making the NVIDIA GPU be quiet and go to sleep. So the Blade 18, as far as I know, it does not have an integrated GPU only option in Synapse. I can quickly check, but because I can open Synapse and check right now. But like, for example, on the Scar 16 and on the Scar 16, Scar 18, and the Legion Pro 7i, and the XMG Neo 16, all of those have iGPU only options, which will force the NVIDIA GPU to be off. So the battery life on those are still not going to be amazing, but for example, Tom from XMG has gotten over 8 hours in a battery life test using the XMG Neo 16 with iGPU only mode. And that's the key that as far as I know, the Blade 18 does not have that, and the Blade 16 doesn't have that either. So either way, you're going to need to make sure that the NVIDIA GPU is staying off, which means you need to make sure that all of the applications that secretly activate the NVIDIA GPU are disabled or turned off. Like Epic Game Stores, my Logitech drivers activated, my Brave browser activates it. There's a lot of different little applications that can turn it on and really kill battery life. So that's the main thing I would say, is the battery life on the Blade 16 could be over 10 hours with this CPU, and you're guaranteed to never get that level of battery life on the Blade 18. Even if you optimize it really well, you're probably only looking at 6 to 8 hours on the Blade 18 with perfect optimization. And with mediocre optimization, probably only 3 to 4 hours on the Blade 18 because of the NVIDIA driver problems. Okay. Christian says XMG Neo 16 with mini LED 300 Hertz QHD display with 5090 AMD Ryzen 9955 HX 3D is by far the most fastest laptop this year, hands down. So I would say that that is going to be up for debate, but very well could be true. With the water cooler, with the Ryzen chip, it's probably going to have the best overall performance. Plus, you get a QHD 300 Hertz display, which again, I think that's the best middle ground right now. The thing is, you're not going to be able to order it. All right, so we go to XMG Neo 16 right now. We go to configure this thing, and they don't even have the option in here for the Ryzen right now. I don't know where's the Ryzen option, because I know they ordered it. I know it's sold out. Is it a different unit? Like, where is it? Let's go 16. I think it might be a different SKU on here. A25, yes. Okay, here it is. Configuring the Ryzen version of the Neo 16. All right, let's see how much it is. I wonder if it's more or less than the Intel version. XMG's website is not the fastest, though I am on a VPN, so that could be part of it. Waiting. So by default, you get the Ryzen 9 9955HX, which has a smaller 3D V cache. So it may be slightly faster in certain multi-threaded applications that don't need the V cache, but in games, the HX 3D should be the fastest option. So here's the HX 3D. It's 215 euros more. If we also want to put the 5090, all right, we're looking at 4313. Does that include Windows? Yeah, so we're going to pre-install Windows 11. Oh, Windows 11, there we go. Yeah, so 32 gigs of RAM without upgraded RAM. You also, if you're going to really order this, you probably would want faster RAM, but I guess the Ryzen chip does not go up to 6400 mega transfers. It just goes to 5600. So you're looking at 4412 out the door. Oh, you want the mini LED, IPS display, 300 Hertz. Now you're looking at 4,587 euros, which let's translate that to USD. We're looking at $5,081 equivalent price. I don't know if Eluktronics is going to offer the Ryzen version or not. I was just talking to them today, so they might or might not. But yeah, if they do, that would be sweet. But as far as I know, they currently do not. But let me just pop into their laptop list. Hydroc G2. Yeah, they only have 4, and they do not offer the Ryzen chip here. So maybe in the future they will. I don't know. I'm talking to them, but they could. So if you want the Ryzen chip currently, you have to go with the XMG Neo 16 A25 or the MSI Raider A18. This is the other HX 3D chip on the market, and this one is also $5,100 approximately. So and it's back ordered. So if you're trying to buy this and you want to see all the links to where you can buy it, there are 6 links down here in the description, on this page to potentially shop around for it and look for it. And I just want to mention here at the end of the live stream that if you want to support me as a content creator, if this video is helpful, if you do end up buying one of these laptops, you can support me without spending any of your money simply by using the links in the video description down below to buy it, or by using the links on the list to buy the laptop, because those will give me a small percentage of whatever you spend. You know, depending on which affiliate it is, it's anywhere from like 0.5% to 2% usually. It depends on which website. But yeah, some are a little bit more. It depends. Either way, it helps support me without you spending any money. So thank you so much to anyone that helps support me. Also, for anyone that has donated or becomes a channel member, thank you so much for your support there as well. And just watching these videos is also support. So big shout out and thank you to everyone watching, liking, subscribing, all of that. What website is he using to configure the laptops? So the laptop, the list, this website here is linked in the video description down below. And this laptop list has pictures as well as links to buy at a bunch of different stores within the United States and some international links to Canada or Europe, depending on where the laptop is from. You know, if it's a European laptop company like XMG, then it'll be a European link. But links to purchase all these laptops are right here on the page. Now, if you want to actually use this to shop my laptop list, my recommendation is to decide what size laptop you want to look at, what price range you want to look at, and set your price points in here, maybe your desired time spy score. You can sort by graphics power, you can see estimated benchmarks, and you can also see the lowest price for the last 6 months. So this is more relevant to the 2024 laptops, but also 2025 laptops. That if they go on sale, we'll be marking that, hey, this laptop actually was on sale for $100 less than it is now. Like this Asus laptop was on sale for $100 less. Some of these other laptops have gone down in price, up and down a little bit. So you want to shop for the best price, you can look at that and be like, oh, the laptop's at the best price that it's been at for the last 6 months. So this laptop list is updated daily. If you're looking for updates on what the laptop markets are doing, you can follow the list right here with this button and get daily email updates for all of the prices on the laptop market as we go along. So yeah, I'm trying to make it as useful a resource as possible. Obviously, for casual laptop buyers, the top 10 deals is probably the most desirable area to spend some time and monitor daily. But if you're looking for just a great place to where you can see what all is available for 2025 laptops, this laptop list should be extremely helpful. Like I said, there's a link in the description down below. And I appreciate everyone that uses these links in here to buy, because it does end up supporting me. And I just did all of that without showing you the laptop list like a goober. So yeah, in here you can sort by price, you can search by laptop GPU model. By, for example, if you type in the search, you can type in 5090. And now all the laptops that you can buy a 5090 with will be in the list. So if you're looking for the top end laptops, that's probably the number one way I'd recommend narrowing it down so you can see all of the top models. If you're looking for, you know, a 5070 Ti, now you can see all of the laptops with 5070 Ti's in them. And you can see that a 5070 Ti currently starts at $1,599 with the Vector 16HX. So that's really good value for what is basically an RTX 4080. So yeah, that's the way I would recommend using the laptop list. Sort it by price or by model number or GPU in the search function, and you'll quickly narrow down the potential laptops you might want to buy. Okay. All right, checking chat again. Which one is the quietest? Good question, Rack. So the Blade 18 that I've used, I would say that almost all of them can have a quieter mode while still having good enough performance to game on. But knowing which one's exactly the quietest, I would need to retest all of them here. So I have to actually do the tests in person, and I'd be able to do it. I'd be able to tell you, but we won't be able to know officially until later. But I can tell you the Blade 18 has a very quiet fan profile for even the higher performance modes. Very, very impressive. The Scar 18 and the Legion Pro 7i also have good performance for quieter, and the Titan 18HX also can have good performance for being quiet. So I know those ones at least can have good performance in quieter modes. So Danny wants to know, you care about performance? Okay. Do 16. Okay, so Danny says it goes to 165 watt. You're talking about the Blade 16 versus the 18. Yeah, so we're talking about the Blade 16 versus 18 a little bit more. The Blade 16, there's also a couple issues with it that you need to keep in mind. If you want to output your display using G-Sync, you're not able to because the display outputs on the sides of the laptop are connected to the Ryzen chip instead of the NVIDIA chip. So you can use FreeSync, but not G-Sync, which can be an issue for some VR headsets, according to some users. I was reading about the Blade 16 also has had some trackpad issues with some of the units not having functional trackpad properly working, but others, I think they've got their units replaced and the new ones are working properly. So I don't think the trackpad issue is a deal breaker. I think the other thing with the Blade 16 is that you should expect not 165 watts very often. Probably not going to get, you're probably looking at more like 145, 140 to 150 watts more often in gameplay, but we need to actually test it. You know, like a lot of these performance laptops we're talking about today can actually do 175 watts in any GPU-bound gaming workload, pretty much. Whereas the Blade 16, because it's such a small chassis and has a much smaller combined TDP, that unless the CPU is almost not being hit, the 5090 may not get to 165 watts very often. Need to actually test it to know it. Maybe it does better because the Ryzen AI 9 is a very power efficient chip. So maybe it's all right. But yeah, I think the Blade 16 and the Zephyrus G16 are probably the top two more portable performance laptops to consider, and certainly worth considering. I'm not saying they're not worth considering. They're definitely going to be some good machines there. But I think the Blade 16's display output issues may bother some people. So definitely something to keep aware of and to look further into to know if it's going to be a problem for your monitor. Okay. Blade 16 says with the cooler, it can go to 175 watt TDP. Interesting. I haven't tested that, Danny. I would want to actually test that to see if the behavior is good enough or not. Because you have other things there to keep in mind is like, does the power adapter have enough juice? Does the VRMs on the motherboard able to handle additional wattage? But if the Blade 16 was designed to go to the full 175 watts when it's on the laptop cooler, then it probably actually can more often. But I need to actually do some more detailed dives into the Blade 16 to see if people have actually tested the cooler with it and under what performance loads does it actually get to 175 watts consistently. But the main thing I'm saying is that with the Blade 16, I would not expect it to hit 175 watts as consistently as something like the Legion Pro 7i or the Blade 18 or the Scar 16 or 18, just because the thicker chassis is going to make it hit those higher wattage limits much more consistently. So it should provide more performance more consistently. That said, the Blade 16 with the 5090 is going to be able to play all the games on Ultra no problem because it's powerful enough. It's just not going to be the same level of performance if it's hitting 20 watts less on average in almost all the game workloads. Then that's going to drop the performance by 10% maybe. I don't know. It's going to affect the performance. But it's still going to be enough performance because then you're talking, okay, instead of 150 FPS, you're going to get 135 FPS. That's still extremely playable. So you're in the excessively playable frame rate range still, regardless. So that's why I think a lot of people are considering the thinner machines this year, like the Blade 16, the Zephyrus G16, the G14, just because graphics cards have gotten so powerful that you're like, do I really need that much performance? Yeah, maybe not. Another option, of course, is just going for saving some money and going for the 5070 Ti. You know, you're going for the 5070 Ti, you're still going to be able to play almost everything on Ultra, but instead of getting 170 FPS or 150 FPS, you're going to be dropping down, you know, 20, 25, 30% of the FPS. You know, we have to actually do the full comparisons here to know, but I'm pretty sure it'd be about 20 to 25% performance loss going down to the 5070 Ti. And you're saving a lot of money making that jump. So like I said at the beginning of this live stream, the 5070 Ti is probably the sweet spot for value versus performance, because you also get that 12 gigs of VRAM, which I think is needed in the current titles, in a lot of the current titles, if you're going to play QHD or higher resolution. 1080p, 8 gig of VRAM is still good enough for most games. Okay, so there you go. I hope you guys enjoyed that live stream. Kellen asks, how is the XMG Neo 16 this year? Very, 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 very good. It's just a niche product that you have to be willing to deal with the water cooler. Like, it's not in my top 3 that I mentioned, because I mentioned the Blade 18 is the top premium. The Legion Pro 7i is kind of the high performance, some premium. And then the Omen 16 is the best value. But if you're looking for just the pure highest performance machine, and maybe that's what we're talking here, the number 1 is the XMG Neo 16 with the Ryzen 9955HX 3D, as far as I know, because of the water cooler and the Ryzen chip with the 3D V cache, should provide the theoretically highest levels of benchmarks. I think we got to actually test the Intel versus the Ryzen, which the review shortage, the review unit shortage right now, and all the bugs with the drivers and everything, we'll have all those numbers probably in the next month or 2. So if you really want to know for sure, if you want to go Intel versus Ryzen, you've got to wait for all those benchmarks to come out. I know the review units are starting to trickle out, so we should see some of those numbers soon. Kellen says the Blade 16 is not designed for ultimate performance. Exactly, and that's why I did not include it in this comparison, but I still talked about it because people were asking questions on it. Marcus Holloway says, do you think the Blade 18 will truly hit 280 watt total power and sustain it, given it's still thinner than the most 18-inch laptops, even if thicker than the 2024 model, has 3 fans? So, I mean, I can tell you that my Blade 18 hit a really high wattage in certain titles, but I don't know. We'll actually have to test it. Marcus, it's one of those things where it seems like a very strong claim, 280 watts combined. I'm guessing you're not going to get 280 watts except in games that have extreme CPU and GPU demand. Games like the Battlefield series, Dead Space. Most games don't hit the CPU that hard. And so they only need 50 watts or 70 watts to the CPU. And then the GPU does 175. And then you're only talking 230 watts total. And that's all the game needs at the maximum possible optimal settings. Of course, yeah. So only certain titles can you even see a performance difference going above about 230 watts or so. But yeah, I would guess that there's a chance that it could do 280 watts. You'll see 280 watts peaking probably repeatedly throughout a gaming session is my guess. But so essentially it is sustaining it, but we'll have to see. 280 watts sustained is kind of insane, but only in a game like Dead Space or maybe Battlefield, you're going to see that. Why doesn't the 5090 175 watt laptops can't even hit 175 watt in games? So Danny, driver issues is I think the reason you're talking. I've had reviewer guides sent to me from XMG where they basically have stated, and I don't want to hang them out to dry. I'm not hanging them out to dry. Basically, it's really NVIDIA. There's an issue from NVIDIA But there's a driver issue where dynamic boost basically stops working properly, and you have to cycle your firmware fan profile mode to get it to go back to 175 watt target again. So if you're running into that bug, they specifically said if you're only seeing 150 watts or less than 175 watts, then you just need to cycle your fan modes from, you know, silent to performance to turbo again or whatever, or overboost in XMG's case. The other issue, of course, is maybe some laptops aren't hitting 175 watts because they don't have GPU. Their GPU is thermal throttling or other issues going on. I don't know. Or maybe the fan profile is not in turbo mode. It could be in like silent or balanced mode instead of high performance mode. That would also be limiting the GPU wattage. I don't know. I'd have to actually see the specific scenario you're talking about to be able to give you the exact answer to what you're saying. But I'm giving you a couple of possibilities here. Kellen says, I've already ordered the X3D Neo 16. Can't wait. Oh, so lucky. I wish. I can't order it because it has the wrong keyboard layout. They don't offer a USA keyboard layout, and the shift key on the left side drives me nuts. So there's no way I would ever buy that. I have the MSI Raider 18 7945HX3D with the 4090. I got it in December for $2,600 on sale. Yeah, you don't need to get another laptop for several years probably. Yeah. Okay. Some people with the Blade 16 are hitting 165 watts with games that use GPU, CPU, like you said, in Dead Space, Battlefield, you know? Danny says, and some aren't. Even, I don't know, it's weird. I'd have to actually see it, but I'm guessing it's driver-related issues because the drivers during this launch time, I've heard from multiple brands that the NVIDIA drivers have been janky, and that's part of the reason why they have not shipped out review units, because they don't want people reviewing the laptops when they're not running at the right wattages and they're crashing and the performance is bad. So, you know, imagine on my live streams if things are crashing and the drivers aren't working properly. No, it's not going to look good. So they'd rather not send a review unit out until the laptop is functioning properly. But apparently they're willing to sell it to consumers. I don't know. It's weird. But they, you know, at the same time, you do look at the delays. Like the Blade 18 was delayed until the end of May to actually ship out any new units. Though some users actually did get their Blade 18 2025 already. So I've had some people email me say, I got my Blade 18 2025. But I have not seen a single review of it yet. And I'm like, sorry, but I can't help you. I don't know what to do. I don't have mine. I don't have a review unit. And I agree. I don't see any reviews of the Blade 18 2025 out yet. But users still have gotten theirs in the mail, despite it being delayed. So very interesting scenario, but very, very clunky, chaotic launch. So, okay. That's it. I hope you guys enjoyed the live stream. I tried to make it as detailed as I can, but top recommended premium laptop, Blade 18, top #1 performance laptop, XMG Neo with the Ryzen chip. Probably the next recommended would probably be the Pro 7i. Best value would be the Omen 16 Max 16 with the Alienware Area 51 16 being the next best value. With the Predator and Aorus ones being promising laptops but need to be the right price to value ratio to make them worth buying over the other laptops. The Titan 18HX being a monster laptop but doesn't seem that worth it for the price currently. I would wait for it to go on sale. The Raider A18 being extremely promising. The Raider 18 also being promising but being pretty high priced. The Scar 16 and 18 being the best designed laptop, I think, with the toolless bottom and the 360 RGB. So those are kind of the summary of my current, all the laptops currently. Some really great laptops, and pretty much can't go wrong buying any of them necessarily. I think most people are going to be super happy with any of them. It's just whether you want the very, very best, which is basically what we're talking about today. So again, I would say the Blade 18 is probably the best overall for premium features, the Neo 16 being the best overall performance features with the Ryzen chip, and the Legion Pro 7i being a great all-arounder for the money, and the Omen 16 being the best value, the Scar 16 being the best designed. Yeah, those are the highlights, I guess, the top 6 out of the 10. For different reasons, each of them have a reason to consider them, I think. And of course, any of these could be purchasable if at the right price. Okay, all right. My goal right now is to do this kind of video, but for different categories until I get the new laptops in. So we'll try to do maybe next one, we'll do maybe best budget laptops for 2025 or the top 10 deals for right now, or the best portable laptops that are also performance, and the best value laptops. There's several different categories we could go into. But today was the best high performance. So I hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next one.